Welcome to the Texas High School Football Coaches Show on Lone Star Gridiron. I'm Chris Daly, and it's my belief that the men that make up the fraternity of Texas high school football coaches are much more than a bunch of thick-necked guys with whistles. They do so much more than teach technique and the X's and O's of football. They take young boys and change them into young men of character. They get kids to believe in themselves, to trust others, and to put others ahead of themselves. Texas high school football coaches are unique in how they impact the lives of these athletes as well as the generations those kids touch. In this show, I sit down with a different Texas high school football coach each time and learn about them. Not their record, not their on-field accomplishments, but who they are and what they believe and what it means to be part of the greatest sport in the greatest state. Hey, welcome back to the Lone Star Gridiron Texas High School Football Coaches Show. I'm Chris Daly, and this week's guest is a great example of just how tough it is as a Texas high school football coach. Eddie Gill, the AD and head coach at Whitesboro, despite taking a team that had not been to the playoffs for 100 years and taking them 8 consecutive seasons, the Whitesboro ISD decided not to renew his contract, and it will expire this summer. He will leave as the winningest coach in school history, and you can bet that anyone looking for a good coach will have him at the top of their list. I will introduce you to him right after these messages. Hey, I want to give a big thank you to this season's title sponsor, Mecca Sportswear, where they are all about celebrating achievement. They're honored that so many high schools, colleges, and universities have chosen Mecca's products to represent their institutions. Mecca supplies you with the very best in custom letter jackets, chenille letters, patches, blankets, banners, pins, certificates, and much more to motivate and celebrate achievement in athletics, academics, or the arts. They create high-quality custom awards that will fit your budget. To see why so many great schools around Texas choose Mecca Sportswear, call Sherry Armstrong or Billy Armstrong at 210-651-6592. Mecca Sportswear, the premier suppliers of letter jackets and awards for over 40 years.
Rocket Man, the story of D.W. Rutledge and the Judson High School football dynasty, is a must-read. It provides complete coverage of every game coached by Rutledge, but more importantly, tells the stories of the impact he has had on the tens of thousands of students, parents, coaches, administrators, and fans. Dr. Charles Breithaupt and Chris Daly, both well known in the Texas high school football community, joined forces to tell this much-needed and inspiring tale. Get your copy now at rocketmanbook.com.
All right, everybody join me in welcoming Coach Eddie Gill from Whitesboro, Texas, to the show. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, just living a dream.
Nice. You are living the dream for sure. I was looking at where Whitesboro is, and you're like a stone's throw from Oklahoma. You're barely a Texan.
Lake Texoma, just right around the corner, and, you know, Ray Roberts is right down the road also, so we're surrounded by water, so that's a good fishing place.
Oh, I bet. I'm going to definitely have to come up there and hit you up for some fishing.
Absolutely. A lot of good striper fishing up in Texoma.
Nice. So on this show, we normally don't talk about your team. We instead talk about you and your history, your philosophy, and this sport that we all love so much. So if you could, take us back to when you personally first discovered football. It could have been as a peewee player or later on. You tell me, when did you discover this game?
Well, actually, my dad was a coach. He was a high school coach 100 years ago, and then later went into administration. And so that's kind of what got me going. We lived in a little town named Moran, Texas, which I think there's more people in your studio right now than there are in Moran. It was a 6-man school, and we didn't have enough boys to play, so I got to play middle school football in 5th grade.
Nice.
And so that's kind of what got started, and I was always a big kid, and so if you play 6-man, that's not really good for big guys. Right. So I had to learn how to run a little bit, so that helped me. And then we later moved to Brownwood, and I played for Coach Wood there at Brownwood. So that's kind of the start of it all.
Nice. And then with your father being a coach, when did you decide that you wanted to be a coach?
Well, that's kind of a weird deal, When you're 18, you feel like you're going to go conquer the world and you know everything. Well, when I went off to school, I saw myself as a psychologist, growing the big long beard, smoking the pipe, and saying, "How does that make you feel?" And so whenever I took my first semester of psychology classes, I figured out all those folks were nuts, just like me. And so I kind of followed in the family business and got into coaching and never looked back. And plus I've been able to use that psychology background a little bit also.
So how does that make you feel?
Yeah, that's a good question. Am I laying down now? Am I on the couch?
Nice. Well, if you could take me from college and stop every position you've had up to today.
Oh, goodness gracious. I've been coaching for 38 years. Or I'm sorry, I can't even keep counting now, 37 years. So I've been a few places. I actually went to the University of Mexico out in Albuquerque out of high school, played for Coach Wood there at Brownwood. Played 2 years. Coach Dykes, Spike Dykes, recruited me out of high school to go play at UNM. UNM got in a little bit of problems with the NCAA, so I transferred and played my last 2 years for Coach Hess at Angelo State. And I was a graduate assistant there for 1 year, and then went up to Oklahoma trying to chase that USFL. They had that USFL then, a team called the Oklahoma Outlaws, and trying to chase that little dream, and tore a knee up while I was had gotten a job there at Broken Arrow High School in Oklahoma. Was there for 3 years coaching defensive line. Came to Azle, Texas, which Bill Hicks was the head coach in Azle. And goodness, I guess that was about 1986. And then I went from there to Tech, where Coach Dykes had become the head coach at Texas Tech. So I GA'd there for a couple of years. And then I worked for Bob Brown at Lubbock, Monterey, as his offensive coordinator for 1 year. And then I was about 28 years old or so, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about football. So I went and got my first head coaching job at a little place called Morton, Texas, and up in the Panhandle, to a little 2A school. And I think there'd been about 0 for 30 in the last 3 years, and that's about the only people that would hire me, So anyway, we won the second game of the season and didn't win another one. Ooh. And I didn't know if I could. Yeah, it was tough. Didn't know if I was cut out to be a head coach or not, but stuck with it. Was there for 5 years. And I went from there to Cisco, Texas, which is right outside of Abilene. Was there for 5 years. My distinct honor there was that I hired Brent West, who has now done a great job at Cisco, a lot better than I could ever do. And he did a fine job, but I was there for 5 years, and I went to Poteet, which is down south of San Antonio, for 5 years. And then I came for Whitesboro, and I've been to Whitesboro for 13 years. So I guess you can say I've been following the turnaround wagon. Morton, Cisco, Poteet, and Whitesboro were all those kind of programs that, kind of needed a little bit of push to get going in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. And
then here we are in 2019.
Yeah, definitely. So in this time, you dropped some names of a lot of great coaches. If you could pull out some of those coaches and talk about the things that you learned from some of those coaches.
Well, the obvious one is Coach Wood at high school. I basically learned lot of work ethic, a lot of attention to detail. Mm-hmm. Always covering the little things. Brownwood. I think everybody thought that Brownwood had tremendously excellent athletes running out their ears. And mm-hmm. what I learned from Coach Wood is that you can take a little bit less and make them more, and it makes for a better football team. Right. And then Coach Dykes, kind of the same way. Being out at Texas Tech, we were never in the same running with the same type of kids at the University of Texas or Texas A&M or some of those type of places could offer, but yet there at Tech we were always very competitive. Matter of fact, when I was there at Tech, we were undefeated against Texas, and so some of those kind of things really help you out to whenever you do decide to become a head coach and start trying to develop a program. You take a lot of those little things, you really don't take any of the X's and O's, right? But you take the philosophies, the work ethic, the determination, the things that's going to last you for a lifetime. You take those with you and you stick them in a playbook and try to make it work.
Nice. You mentioned also that at several points in your I guess life, there were times when you felt you knew it all, because we've all been there. Some of us, it takes us a little longer.
Well, I've been doing this for 37 years, 28 as a head coach in AD, and I'm still learning stuff,
Exactly.
So I'm still a pup.
And I think the correct answer is, you don't know it all until you realize you don't know it all.
Right. Yeah. That's a lot of wisdom in that.
But so early on in a lot of coaches' careers, they focus on those X's and O's, the W's and the losses.
Yes, sir.
And as you realize that's not what it's about these kids. But talk about that transition for you, when that happened and how.
Well, and it does take a little bit. You have to learn some lessons. I mean, that first year we were 1-9, and I thought I was an idiot. After thinking that I'd coached the Division I college football. I'd coached the Division II. I'd been a coordinator at the 6A level and what is now 6A. And, I thought that, I had plenty of bullets in my belt, to go out there and win every state championship that would ever, for every season, and then you walk out there and you understand that, when I first got to Morton, we had 17 kids in the program. Mm. Well, there's a few different things that you have to face besides, what the talent level is. And that's what I love about coaching. It's more of a calling, I think, than it is a profession. I think I really try to preach that to a lot of the young guys that I've come in contact with on my staff or that we have in the district or something like that, it's not about the wins and the losses. It's not about the, successes. Right. Success is gauged by whether or not you're giving great effort, whether or not you're trying your best. I've been at places that the talent level just will not allow you to have great success as far as a win-loss record is concerned. Right. But if you can walk off that field and earn the respect, I can remember the first year I was here at Whitesboro. Well, we're in the same district with Salina and Prosper and and Argyle and all those kind of guys, and we were 4-5 going in the last game of the year, and we didn't have a chance to make the playoffs. Well, we're playing Salina. Well, Salina just happened to, I think, win the state championship that year, which they were winning about every year that along those times anyway. And I can remember my superintendent. We were going out on the field, and it was early November night, so it was pretty cool. And the crowd wasn't really not big. It was at our place, and so he's like, he just kind of rolled his eyes. He says, "Boy, Coach, I hope it doesn't get ugly tonight." And I just kind of I kind of looked at him and grinned. I said, "No, I'm not going to tell." Well, it's Dr. Lee, Dr. Ray Lee, and he's retired since then. But I said, "Dr. Lee, I'd never run up the score on anybody." And he just kind of looked at me and started laughing. Of course, Salina kind of got after us. They beat us by about 3 touchdowns. And And but we played hard, and in the third quarter we're hanging in there, and we may even have a lead at some point in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. But I remember Coach Ford coming across after the game, and we had great respect for each other until he retired. But he was just like, that's what they do. That's how they built that deal over at Salina with G.A. Moore and all that bunch. And then Butch followed and is working hard and having great work ethic and, all those corny words that in today's world nobody likes to talk about, And, even since then, we've been in the playoffs 8 years in a row now, and it took us 100 years here at Whitesboro. They started playing football in 1911, and it wasn't until 2011 that Whitesboro ever made the playoffs. Mm. Well, but that's not good enough. If you can do, you just keep improving. And I can remember going up against Mineola, whenever they had their really good teams. They were in the state finals, and then the next year they won it. Well, those 2 years, they beat us in the second round both years and just knocked down dragouts, Coach Drennan and his guys. Man, they had a great football team. But our old kids were just, hard-working, hard-nosed kids, and I think that's what's great about this game is it doesn't have anything to do with, size or speed or talent. Now, it'd be nice if we I'm not saying I don't ever want to have any of those kind of guys, but I think the work ethic that that this game gives you, the teamwork that it gives you, the sacrifice, the selflessness. We have I love acronyms, and we've gone for a long time with the Bearcat Standard, and our standard, the S is for servant, and that's the first letter. The second letter is T, and that's for tough. And we tell everybody, if you're tough without being a servant, you're just a bully. Right. But if you're tough while you're being a servant, then you're gonna create teammates. You're gonna create relationships that are gonna last forever. And you don't look at people as what their skin color is or how much money they have. You look at people as who they are and what they do. Who they be. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'll start preaching on you if you're not careful.
Hey, no, preach to the choir right here, baby. I love it.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that aspect of it. The aspect of this not being about wins or trophies or rings or anything like that, but about changing those young men's lives and what you've seen. And, having a front row to this, what have you seen this game develop into people?
Well, people a lot smarter than I have done studies and that kind of thing, and they'll come up and they'll say, well, 2% of the high school athletes, of the high school football players, play college football. 2%. Right. But I've got, 15% of those guys, they'll go into the armed services, or they'll go be policemen, or they'll be going firemen or paramedics, or, some type of service industry. And I think that's a great opportunity that we have in not just in football, but in athletics, period. That's hard to teach in an English class or a math class or a science class. They're worried about testing, and they're worried about, we get to have the subjective role in the education process, we in athletics, and especially in football, because football's just so much, it's so hard. Yeah. I mean, you sweat when it's 107 degrees out there, and you look across at the guy, and that he's, in just as much pain and, and just as much anguish as you are. And I'm not even talking about the players. I'm talking about the coaches now. It gets hard out there. But you develop relationships to know that, when something goes wrong or if something happens, that I'm going to have, friendships, and not just friendships, but I'm also going to be reliant, that I know that just because it gets tough, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to be entitled. One of the biggest messages we send to our kids right now is that, I feel like a lot of times we live in an age of entitlement, whether it be on the high end or the low end. Mm-hmm. There's people that feel like, they deserve this. Well, there's a great prophet that once said, and his name is Clint Eastwood, and he said, deserves got nothing to do with it. You know, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie Unforgiven, but, the deserves, where, it's a privilege to get to do what we do, and it's a blessing from the Lord, and if you don't get out there and use those blessings, and you can lose it real easy. So anyway, I mean, there's from A to Z. I don't know if you can put a finger on any one thing that you get to work with the kids about, because there's so many kids. I mean, there's over the course of 28 years of being a head coach and an AD. I mean, matter of fact, I had a young man in my office yesterday that played for us here at Whitesboro. Oh, it's been, 11, 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now he's a fireman and paramedic, down in the Metroplex area. And, and we just sat here and talked, for about 30 minutes. And, he walks out and, you just kind of get choked up a little bit, because that you had an influence on how that young man came about, and I mean, he didn't have the talents to go be the next NFL guy or something like that, but boy, he's a godly husband and a godly father, and mm-hmm. and would give up his right arm for the guys that he played with. So to me, that's a lot more special than how many guys we got to play college football, right. which in 28 years, just so you'll know, I was actually thinking about this the other day. I've only had 7 guys that played college football 28 years. Wow. And none of them played Division I. I had one that played Division I, but he started out as a walk-on. Mm-hmm. And that's the Labhart boy that went down to A&M, with Johnny Manziel, right. Mike Evans, and all that kind of stuff. And he actually wound up starting, but he was a walk-on. So and that's another lesson that we try to teach our guys. Just because you don't meet the measurables doesn't mean that you can't go and compete and try to earn those spots. Be diligent with it. If that's your dream, then by gosh, go do it. So nice. Anyway,
so you mentioned, well, you got the stories like that. Those kids that end up where you want them to end up, doing the right things, becoming the right people. And then you've also got the kids who are falling into this age of entitlement, the Xbox generation.
Right.
Have you seen a big difference in kids between now and 25 years ago?
A little bit as far as the technology part's concerned. I think we're way too addicted to it. I mean, it was just like, not this past Christmas, but Christmas before last, my kids finally just wore me out and said, Dad, you got to get a phone. You've got to get a cell phone, all that kind of stuff. And I hated it. I fought it, but, every step of the way, because I see so many of the kids, they're just glued to it, or glued to an Xbox or whatever the flavor of the month is. Right. And, I don't know that that's a horrible thing. All I do know is it keeps us from being able to relate to one another. Mm-hmm. I think we paint ourselves in a corner a lot of times. We're not, I've never been one to mince words, and I tell our boys as often as I can, especially when they start, if we're on a bus trip or something like that, and they start pulling that phone out, I tell them, I'm like, that social media stuff, that's straight from the bowels of hell. Yep. And because it creates such a negative thing, because 99% of it on there is negative. And if you just keep feeding that into your brain, then you're going to start having some of those thoughts. I mean, you look at even the professional athletes and stuff. I mean, most of the time they get in trouble with some type of, multimedia type things, because they said something or tweeted. So I don't even know what a tweet is, but they, they got on some kind of little quick thing and just said something that they didn't have time to think about saying. Right. Because because you know them and you're like, that kid really doesn't think that way.
Right.
You know, he just popped off. You know, I mean, you get in the course of the game, and that's what I like about athletics too, is it teaches you how to deal with pressure.
Yeah.
You know, you get in the course of the game, and you know somebody gets all tangled up with you, and I mean, how are you gonna react to that? You gonna punch them in the nose, or are you gonna, you know, help them back up, and you know, then get after them again when the ball snapped? You know, so it teaches you how to deal with adversity. It teaches you those things, but you know, in today's world, it's hard to imagine, you know, what it was even 15 years ago. Yeah. And that, you know, I mean, I don't know that we have very many of our kids anymore that, you know, my biggest problem when I first started coaching to get kids to two-a-days was, well, that's because they were all out working.
Yeah.
You know, exactly. and now, you know, it's, gosh, you know, don't come to two-a-days, boys, out of shape. You better get out there and get to work. So, you know, and that's, we try to tell them all those uncool words like work ethic and loyalty and dedication and commitment. They're the cool things. We're trying to change that culture a little bit, you know,
right,
and make them understand and think that.
Well, yeah, I for one am grateful that, you know, back when I was growing up and young and dumb, there wasn't social media around for me to, you know, spout off on, because I would have gotten off.
Right. Yeah. I've been in trouble all the time, you know, but yeah, I understand that completely. I agree completely.
So if someone comes up to you who is, you know, because there's an attack on football. Someone who comes up to you who thinks football is a waste of time, waste of money, or dangerous, how can you convince them otherwise?
Well, you mentioned several different aspects of it there.
Yeah.
And I'll try to take them on one at a time. As far as dangerous, you know, I have parents all the time that they talk about, well, I don't want my kid to get hurt and all that kind of stuff. And I tell them, well, do you want them to drive?
Yes.
And, you know, and they'll say, well, of course, you know, he's going to get his driver's license whenever he turns 16. I'm like, well, no. If you don't want him to get hurt, but, you know, because there's pain out there in the world, there's danger out there in the world, there's things that are going to happen. And so is the game dangerous? Absolutely. But it's not any more dangerous than walking across the street.
Right.
You know, we're in a good way right now in the danger part of it, with all the head injuries and all that kind of stuff, and with all the reteaching of tackling, and which is not reteaching, or I'm sorry, it is reteaching, because if you'll remember back in, you know, back whenever I went to school, we tackled with our shoulders.
Yeah. You
know, and that's basically what we're reteaching, is to get your head out of it, and that all came because when the game was formed, you know, and I've told this to lots of different people. Of course, nobody's going to listen to me. I said, if you want to make the game safer, take the face mask off the helmet.
Yeah, I agree.
They'll stop using that helmet as a weapon.
I agree. I was taught to lead with my face mask in high school football, and when I'd get knocked out, they just break open that ammonia tablet or capsule,
right?
Get you back on the field.
You didn't know how many concussions you really had, you know, which, you know, and I think, and, you know, you come along that same line, and I think we've knee-jerked it, you know, well, concussions are a dangerous thing. Well, yeah, they're a dangerous thing. But the guys that are, the folks that are having a lot of problems are having other problems along with it.
Yeah.
You know, some of the guys that, especially in the NFL, you know, I appreciate that they made that movie Concussion. But, you know, a lot of the folks that they mentioned, they were having other problems,
right,
besides just having concussions. I mean, and not saying that anybody was doing this, but, I mean, it was during that time period, that frame of time, when every other guy was doing steroids. Well, well, how does that coincide with, you know, a bruised brain, and then you throw steroids on top of that, and then you throw, you know, alcohol and other drugs and not taking care of your body? How do you throw those kind of things on top of that?
Yeah.
And, you know, you know, as far as the danger part of it is concerned, I truly try to tell parents is, number one, we're going to try to keep your kids safe. We're going to try to teach them in the right way, but you can't live in fear. If you do, then don't ever walk out your door, or you're going to be afraid that something is going to happen to you. Other aspects of the game, there's things that the game of football teaches that you can't learn any other place except maybe in battle. That camaraderie, that relationship that you have with somebody whenever you look at them and you know that they've sweat and bled, and that there is that danger out there, and that there is that reliance on you when it's 4th down and 6 inches. And I'm sorry, you can't get that anywhere else. Right. I read an article one time that General MacArthur was giving a speech. This is post the World War II and after he'd retired, but he made the comment to a group and he said that 96% of the commissioned officers in World War II were ex-football players.
Nice.
And then he kind of paused, and then he said, and that was by design by the generals of the armies. We wanted those guys who had been in trenches and had been in battle and had been, so there's a toughness that I feel like a lot of times our people right now, our culture, have not been used to. We've coddled a lot of our young women and a lot of our young men to where they're not tough people. And I think that's important that we instill that. Our great nation was founded by tough people. Yeah. And I think we've lost a little bit of that. And so I think that the game of football is important in that respect. That it's not important, I think you can make the same argument. Do we spend too much money on it? Is it not worth it? I think you can. There's an argument there. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, we're still playing on a grass football field. Right. Our bleacher, we're very modest here at Whitesboro. We want to look good. Our uniforms look nice and all that other kind of stuff. And we're going to have top-notch equipment. But, I think our superintendent, Mr. Harper, and our board has done an excellent job of being able to justify a budget. Right. And, I'm not at somewhere else. Does X high school need a $40 million or $60 million football stadium? I don't know. Because I've gone to games. I like them because we play playoff games in them. Yeah. And they're pretty and they're nice. And so, I can't justify that. My wife is a SLP, a speech language pathologist. Uh-huh. And, she gives me grief all the time about the difference between her special education budget and our athletics budget. Right. And I'm like, well, it's just a matter of priority, and I'm gonna fight and wrestle for every dime that I can get, as she should also. Right. So, that's kind of tricky on that one. But as far as the importance of it, the need of it, I'd argue to my last breath. And, a lot of people, they may look at me and say, okay, well, you've been doing this for 37 years. You've been a head coach and AD for 28. Isn't it about time to hang it up? And, I'm, as long as I have energy and energy doesn't have anything to do with age. You understand that, right? Yeah. Energy is about the excitement you get whenever you start talking about young people, and whenever you start talking about the potential that they have and what, how you can mold that and shape that. As long as I have that, then we're going to keep preaching that same message, and hopefully it's contagious. Does that make sense? I know it is with the young folks on my staff. I've got guys that are, 24 and 25 years old on my staff, and I love it that I get to sit there and preach to our kids and talk to our coaches that, that you're in the best profession that mankind can ever have. you may not be the rich guy, but that's not what it's about. It's about giving opportunities for those young kids to live their dream. So anyway, like I said, I'll preach at you if you're not careful.
I'm with you. I agree so much with everything you're talking about. One other thing I want to ask you about, the importance of picking a good wife.
Oh my goodness, this is great time, and I need to get this, and I need to record this and play it for my wife. This is Thursday. Last Monday, we just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary.
Nice.
And we went away we had a long weekend, and we went away, and I mean nothing exotic or anything, but we just kind of spent a lot of time together and all that kind of stuff. And boy, it was really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right up front, a lot of coaches say, well, you got to have a wife that loves the game of football. My wife doesn't love the game of football.
Right.
I mean, she is an intelligent, beautiful lady that knows exactly, she understands what it's all about. She gets the importance of the game of football, but number one, she doesn't like to go out and sit in the cold.
Yeah.
When it comes playoff time, she's like, get a stadium that has a press box that we can go up and sit in, and I'm like, yes, ma'am, get that taken care of, so, it's an important thing though for those kind of folks to have that, the Bible says don't be unequally yoked. Well, that doesn't mean you have to agree on everything, but it does mean that you have to understand that you're on the same page and on the same team. And my wife and I have raised our kids. I've got a daughter and a son. Both of them are very active in all athletics, multi-sports. One of the reasons why that she's from Seagraves. I don't know if you know where Seagraves is. That's out by Lubbock, and it's a small school. Of course, I'm from Brownwood, and we wanted that same type setting for our own kids. And, my daughter, she now works here at the high school with us as an aide. And she went and graduated from Christ for the Nations Institute, but she ran cross country, played volleyball, played basketball, and of course ran track, and was in the choir. Did all kind of different things in her high school experience. My son, who is now on our coaching staff, he's also our offensive coordinator and runs all of our strength conditioning stuff and helps in track. But he played. If it had a ball in it, he was playing it. He was a very good football player, very good basketball player, good baseball player, ran track. He also was in the choir, and they just did a lot of different things. And if I didn't have a wife that had those same desires and those same goals for her children, then we would be at an impasse. And so it's very important that, and it's not that you have to have the same person, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. It just happens that she is too.
Nice.
But that's about the only time we sit and watch football together is at that time. But if you don't have the equalness, that you have the same goals for family, for way of life, I guess I should say.
Right.
I knew I wanted a godly woman, and now she's the one that holds my feet to the fire to make sure that I'm studying, to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing to grow spiritually and emotionally and mentally. And so it's also a challenge, So a wife is a helpmeet to all you young people out there listening. The husband is a helpmate, and that doesn't mean they're, you're subordinate. That means that they're there to help you.
Right.
And so, go and they're out there. Believe it or not, a lot of folks will say, I'm glad this is radio and not television because I'm an ugly old boy, and I've got a pretty wife, and they're out there. And
so, are you saying you outkicked your coverage?
Man, I tell you what, that ball's still rolling. You know, she picked it up and keeps running it back on me. So, yeah, I definitely outkicked my coverage.
Love it. All right, Coach Eddie Gill, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and sharing a little bit of your story.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
You bet.
Rocket Man, the story of D.W. Rutledge and the Judson High School football dynasty, is a must-read. It provides complete coverage of every game coached by Rutledge, but more importantly, tells the stories of the impact he has had on the tens of thousands of students, parents, coaches, administrators, and fans. Dr. Charles Breithaupt and Chris Daly, both well-known in the Texas high school football community, joined forces to tell this much-needed and inspiring tale. Get your copy now at rocketmanbook.com. Once again, I want to thank Eddie Gill for being here. I want to thank the sponsors who made this all possible. Please go out there and support them. They do so much to bring these great stories to people. And we'll see you next week.